I have a bean project that I've been working on for 10 years now, where I've been selecting chance crosses in my bean crops. I do about 1,700 bed feet of beans every year, 17 varieties, and they all cross up. So maybe one day I'll be known for a special bean.
Welcome to episode 39 of the Seed Farmer Podcast, the podcast where I want you to harvest seeds from some of the vegetables and flowers growing in your farm or garden, and then to plant that seed out to grow delicious vegetables and beautiful flowers. I'm your host, Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and author of The Seed Farmer, a complete guide to growing, using, and selling your own seeds. Today is pretty exciting because we're back in interview season. My goal through the coming months is to alternate 1 week with an interview with a seed farmer or a seed-related person, and then the other week, a seedy mini-sode like we've been having lately. So today is interview day. But first, a bit of news. The Seed Farmer Mentorship is now open for registration. The core of the mentorship is 7 modules. Module 1 is Seed Basics. Module 2 is Harvest and Post-Harvest Record Keeping. Module 3 is Germination Tests and Seed Storage. Module 4 is Crop Planning, including field layout, rotation, integrating seed crops in a market garden. Module 6 is Plant Selection and Genetic Improvement, including on-farm plant breeding. And Module 7 will be Distributing Seeds. So that's like bulk sales versus pack sales, pricing, and that kind of thing. So these 7 modules are going to be released over a period of time. The first module is going to be available as soon as you sign up, and then module 2 will come out in mid-December or so, and then in early January, every 2 weeks, there'll be another module. And the idea here is that there'll be a module that you can watch and study as much as you wish, and then there's going to be a live session a couple weeks later, or maybe 1 or 2 weeks after the module is released, that you can come to with the other participants in the mentorship, and we could talk through the subject matter to make sure that you get the support you need in that specific topic. And so the first live session will be in January, and there'll be kind of 2 per month from January through to March. So that's the core of the mentorship. You can sign up and see more details at spreadsheet.farm/mentorship. More news? Next week on November 12th is the 2025 Midwest Organic Seed Summit, organized by the Organic Seed Alliance. Here's what OSA shared with me about this. This is a free virtual event focused on the theme of cooperative seed economics. There'll be a presentation and roundtable discussions on the cooperative business model, and we'll make time at the end for community building and project planning among organic seed stewards. I think this is going to be a great event. The link is also in the show notes. And the last piece of news is that I have finally finished uploading episodes 1 to 10 of the Seed Farmer podcast onto YouTube. I've only started putting episodes on, I think, starting around number 26 or so. So I've been trying to fill in those spaces beforehand. So if you're one of those people who likes to listen to podcasts on YouTube, you can now find these classic episodes, and they are great. Do send me any seedy news that you want me to share. And now, let's get into today's conversation. Matt Bell is this episode's guest. Matt has worked at Johnny's Selected Seeds in Albion, Maine since 2018. He is currently in a trial technician role focusing on cucurbits, but today's conversation is mostly about some of his previous work with brassicas. Matt comes from a family with a long history of seed saving, and he pursues that tradition by growing seeds outside of his work at Johnny's, at home. He also grows vegetables for his partner's Café Grazie in Rockland, Maine. In this episode, Matt shares how he approaches seed production with intentional goals, 5-year selection plans, and the value of diversity over uniformity. And then we dive into overwintering brassicas, from digging and potting plants, pruning, and greenhouse setup, to managing cold-hardiness, rodent and aphid pressures, and drip irrigation. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the Seed Farmer Podcast.
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
I'm really excited to pick your brain about overwintering brassicas and possibly other crops. But first, could you introduce yourself and tell us your seed story?
Sure. My name is Matt. Um, I work at Johnny's Selected Seeds in Albion, Maine. Um, and for the last, from the fall of 2020 to this spring, basically, I worked with John Navazio on Overwintering Brassicas and all of his biennial programs. And I also have at home, I also have taken all these projects home with me. Not the germplasm, but the ideas and the techniques. Um, but my seed story goes back before John and before Johnny's to when I was young. Both I believe my great grandfather and then my grandmother were seed savers as well. I wish I had spent more time with them back then, but
Oh, I bet.
yeah. And then my parents were homesteaders, and then we moved away from that, as most people did, through the 80s and 90s. And then I got back into farming in the mid 2000s. Seed saving for me wasn't a goal until I had met John, but learning how to do it seemed like a great opportunity for education.
So you were market growing. You were market gardening. Like
Yes.
you're growing vegetables for farmers markets, maybe CSA.
Yeah, I did a CSA farming in Portland, Oregon for a couple of seasons at a great farm that is in Portland, and they had a couple properties around. And I learned a lot about trialing there. They did 20% of all of their crops were trials in case they lost the stuff they liked. And then
Not enough people do that.
no, they don't. I didn't know that until I moved to Maine and started farming at mostly market farms. And then for 3 years, I ran or managed a sauerkraut farm,
Oh,
growing a
wow.
lot of cabbage and hot peppers for a few years.
Like, did you start working at Johnny's before you got bit by seeds, or were you already kind of thinking about seeds and they're kind of just their importance?
I've always thought about seeds and their importance, but I never I saved seed here and there. The farm in Oregon, we had a bean project. We called it Laura's Big White. We were always selecting for the larger big white bean. And then here in Maine, I would save pepper seed, tomato seed.
So it sounds like your seed story is long and deep, and that it's kind of just been part of it's part of your gardening and farming journey has been just that
Yeah,
you can do that.
yes. But I never did it consciously, I guess I would say, or like with a goal in mind.
Hmm.
And that's what changed for me coming to Johnny's. Now I can't do it without a goal in mind.
And what would, when you say a goal in mind, what would a goal in mind mean?
I see something I like or I think of an idea and I'm like, what can I do to get there? And then I would look at the germplasm that I have and think in 5 years, I want it to look like this, and then slowly select over those years.
Does that mean crossing in other things, or does that just mean starting with a large population and selecting what you like?
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
Um, yeah. But for me, I enjoy more the taking a bunch of things and mixing them up, and then coming up with a plan after the first look at what happened. Like if you take a bunch of red kale and maybe some broccoli and some, I don't know, I'll throw in kohlrabi and then just to see what happens and then think about where I could take that in a few years.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was kind of John's technique on some things. And at home, I just mix mostly greens because that's what my partner, can't remember if I mentioned this, but my partner has a cafe and I supply them with some vegetables. And greens is that they don't care what they look like, so they can be all wild, and they'll take as much as I can give them.
So the eaters at that cafe don't know the diversity and
No,
wonder that they have access to there.
correct. Yeah,
I love hearing that because one of the things I'm always trying to get to transmit on the podcast is that it doesn't have to be uniform. You know, to distribute at a farmer's market or put in your CSA basket, you can have diversity and people can still
yeah.
enjoy it.
And often I think it's better with diversity because it draws the eye.
Definitely. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at Johnny's and maybe how that's changed over the
Sure.
years?
I started at Johnny's in 2018 in the call center, and that winter I had my daughter. It was supposed to only be a winter job for me. Here in Maine, a lot of farmers will work in the call center at Johnny's, giving advice and helping people with their orders. So I did that for 2 winters, 2018, 19. And then I ended up liking the company a lot, and I like the stability at Johnny's. So I took a job on the farm in the greenhouse crew. We've got a lot of greenhouses, as you can imagine, for the trials, but it's a lot of trellising work and a lot of, yeah, it's kind of weird. I'll get into it later, all the strange things we do. But then I worked a lot with John and ended up really liking his crops. So I had an opportunity to join his team. So I did that in 2020, and then in for the first year with him, I documented and learned all that he was doing because he was a paper and pencil guy, and our goal was to get him onto the computer, to be more of a computer guy. I got his stuff onto the computer, but he remained a pencil and paper guy. And then I took over the kind of the management of a couple of his projects, Swiss chard and a couple other smaller things. And recently, I have moved into a different position, trialing cucurbits, which is drastically different. The cycle is different, the pests and disease are different, and so I'm no longer in the breeding department, but I'm trying to continue my education in vegetables.
Do you find cucurbits as exciting as the other crops that you were working with?
I do.
I'm not going to tell anybody. You can
Yeah,
be
no, I
honest here.
do. John was all OPs all the time, basically, and with the cucurbits, I can see more that's out there in the world, instead of focusing only on the OP.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, I mean, I really like squash. It's so good to eat all winter long, and my daughter loves cucumbers, so the more I can bring home, the better, and she is really enjoying the change from the eater's
I
perspective.
love
Yeah.
that. The reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is to talk about overwintering brassicas. And we've met in the last couple years and have been seeing each other at different conferences. And I keep asking you questions about overwintering brassicas, specifically in pots. And I'm about to do that. We have a bunch of Brussels sprouts in the field that we're going to select from and then choose next year's stock seed, or I don't know if that's the right term, next year's seed crop. And I want to make sure that we do it right because in the past, I guess just to historically, in the past, we've always done our overwintering brassicas. We've dug stuff up, we've transplanted it into a greenhouse straight into the ground, and we've overwintered things there. And we've had success with like kohlrabi and kale, and those are the main ones that we've done. Brussels sprouts, this is a new one that we've been trialing, and it might work, that technique, but we actually have had a really high rodent pressure in the last year or two. They decimated the crop in a really short time last year, so we were not able to get any seed off of it, which really frustrated me. And so we've been thinking of digging them up, putting them in pots, overwintering them in that kind of way. And I got a gut feeling what to do, but I know that there are things that I'm not thinking about and things I might be wrong about. So that's what I wanted to have a conversation with you, I guess, on the record about these things.
Are you doing it in a heated house or when it's in the ground?
It's an unheated house, so it's just
Hmm.
solar. It can get fairly warm at different
Yeah.
times, but it's
Okay.
unheated.
At Johnny's, we used to, when I started in the biennials, brassicas, we had a habit of digging plants out of the field and putting them in pots, and putting them into a heated greenhouse. Our houses are kept at around 50 degrees, and they dip to around freezing at times with the wind and the severe cold. And then we would also harvest seed in August and then seed it in September and then plant it out in, like you were saying, but we would have our nursery in unheated greenhouses. So we kind of had two systems going on where we would dig things we liked, put them in pots in a greenhouse, and then we would also have a nursery in the ground in 100-foot greenhouses.
Can I ask what brassica crops you're thinking about?
This would include things like collards, biennial broccolis, cabbages, kale, the more leafy things. And then in the spring, from the tunnel stuff that was in the ground, we would actually dig it out and put it in pots and store it in a greenhouse for 2 to 3 weeks, and then plant it out into field isolations to go to seed. So what would happen in this situation where you have things dug in the fall, put in pots, and then things dug in the spring, put in pots, is they flower at different times.
Hmm.
This is good if you're trying to cross things that flower at different times and you're trying to get them to flower at the same time, like cabbage and kale, if that's the thing you're trying to do. Then you could try and play the game where you're getting the flowering to adjust to be the same time. But for me, this was a nightmare because I've got plants all over the place going at all different times. So I propose that we move everything to a field nursery in the fall, dig all the plants that we want, make our selections, and store them in a greenhouse through the winter, and then take them to seed early spring, and to harvest seed in July. So one system is about 1 month off, if that makes sense.
Okay, so the stuff that was in pots is coming out in July, and the stuff that was in the ground is coming out in
Yes.
August as seed,
Yep.
being
Yep.
harvested as seed. Yeah,
As you can tell just from me telling you, it gets very confusing as to what's what and
yeah.
where to put things. Um, there's benefits in both systems, and it was kind of a tough choice when I said I would prefer if we just did one. The overwintering in the ground, you get the benefit of selecting for more cold hardiness, um, because
Hmm.
we allow the plants to go to a lower temperature before covering them, but then you get the seed later, and the disadvantage is you are off cycle of our seed partners on the West Coast, who which is interesting.
This actually, I realized that. So I know exactly where Johnny's is, and I
Yeah.
visited there, and I've been around Maine, so I know the weather. I realized that not all listeners might know the weather. Can you take a little moment to fill us in on what the
Oh
climate
yeah,
is
yeah. So
where you are and how that affects
yeah, we
seed?
are in zone 5B or 5A, depending on the year, it seems, how cold it gets. And then at home, I'm in zone 5B, and sometimes I feel like 6A, so it's slightly warmer. So I overwinter at home outside, and it snows. Some years we get pretty heavy snow. There could be a couple feet on the ground, and cloudy, and then other years it could be a lot of snow and very sunny. So it's very varying, but cold, down to -15 at the
Hmm.
coldest. Um,
So it's hard to overwinter outdoors.
Yeah,
A
you
lot of
a
crops
lot of
in
crops.
that,
Yeah. Uh, but you can with row cover overwinter leafy brassicas outside.
especially if you have the snowfall.
Yeah, with the snowfall, if it is a sleeting rain year, they don't survive nearly as well.
Hmm. Which has been our experience also, much to my dismay.
Yeah,
So you have a real winter, and so so
yes.
that's why you're looking for strategies to have more consistent overwintering, more reliable overwintering, and kind of exploring both the pots and the in the ground.
Yeah, in the ground.
And
Yeah.
is that your current system right now? Is in the ground?
The current system is outdoors in the fall in the ground nursery.
Yep.
And then we will be digging those plants next week, I believe.
Hmm.
And then they will be going into pots out of the ground in the greenhouse through the winter.
Okay.
And that's the current system that we're using. Um,
And are you no longer working with that because you're now moving to cucurbits?
that is correct, but I am advising them because I know all the germplasm.
Fantastic. Have you worked with Brussels sprouts before?
I have not, and I'm very curious about how they
Okay.
um, how they go. Kind of from I don't know how they if they're like cabbage, where you have to trim them up, or if they just elongate out. And I'm also curious about your pest pressure
Hmm.
on
Which specific
on them.
pests are you talking about?
Aphids,
Yeah.
aphids. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I will tell you. Yeah, I mean, aphids have definitely become a bigger problem in our overwintering greenhouses over the last couple of years. I know some people have like it's not a new problem, like something that's coming from elsewhere, but we just haven't had
Right.
as many overwintering, and there have been more in the last couple of years. But as I was saying, like last year, it wasn't the aphids the problem with the Brussels sprouts; it was the rodents,
Oh yeah, that's the
and
vermin.
so
Yeah.
I'm not as worried. I think that we don't fertilize too heavily the stuff like where I think we're having the most aphid pressure is probably the fresh market crops that are in the greenhouse. So stuff like spinach for sure, and then
Hmm.
some brassica greens, like some bunching turnips, and that's where we can see a lot more aphid pressure. The overwintering crops haven't had the same degree.
Okay.
I hope that stays that way.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
So this brassicas more broadly. When you go to dig them up, so you're going to dig them. You're going to dig them up in just the beginning of November or so, end of October, beginning of November.
Yeah, and yeah.
How? Let's say it's you can choose the crop, kale or cabbage or whatever.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can choose the crop. Like, what do you do to the top of the plant first, if anything, and then what do you do afterwards to get it out of the ground?
Sure. You want to prune that plant up to not much leaf. So take like half to two-thirds of the leaf off the crop. And then we use for brassicas, we use 3-gallon pots, and we all dig differently. So I have a habit of digging something that is too large for the pot, circumference wise. I should back up to say that before we go out to the field, we actually fill the pots halfway up with like pro mix, like a peat-based, a drier potting mix,
Okay.
because your root ball through the winter, you don't want it to rot, so you want it to be able to dry out,
Hmm.
um, and so the roots will actually grow into it better. So we half fill. If it's raining out, I don't wet the soil, and if it's a drier year, then I'll pre-wet the soil. And then you dig out the plant to be roughly the size of the pot you're putting it in, and then so you can shove more of your pro mix, around it, and you just set it in, with as much root ball as you can get in there, and you want to make sure that you leave about 2 to 3 centimeters of space on top so that when you water, the water doesn't just drain off the pots.
You want a couple inches at
Yeah.
the top, or you said you want about an inch at the
Yeah,
top
like an inch.
to.
Yeah, about an inch at the
Yeah,
top.
I get that.
Yeah, and then also another reason you would want space there is the soil that you're bringing in from the field can have a tendency to get like moss on it and some other things, and you could actually put a little bit of that mix on top of it, and it negates that problem,
Hmm.
and it makes watering a little bit easier, um, and it regulates the moisture better.
Are these pots? Are they perforated, or do they have holes on the bottom so that it can drain?
Yes. Yep. We have made the mistake of a few pots here and there with no holes, and those root balls usually
Don't.
they
Yeah,
rot.
you notice.
Yeah. Yep. You notice pretty. Sometimes you don't notice till you're pulling them out.
Oh,
You're like, this didn't work.
yeah, yeah. So you put them into the pots. Is there anything at that stage that I wouldn't think about or that you should highlight?
Yeah. So we it this really depends on the weather. If it's a really sunny day, you want to move those plants to a very shady location and prune more leaves off than you did in the field, probably, because you'll start seeing them wilt, and then you want to water them pretty good at that point. On a shady day, you can just put them directly into a greenhouse, but still you try to remember to water it.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where you'll be moving them next to. Next is you're going to be moving them into an actual greenhouse.
Yep, they'll be in a greenhouse that's set to 50 degrees.
Okay, which is about 10 Celsius, so it's above freezing, but
Yes,
not too
correct.
hot.
Yeah.
Is it important to be at about that temperature? Like if it was cold, or what happens?
Oh, if it was cold, it would be fine. You could go down to 5 degrees Celsius,
Yeah.
or like, what is that? Yep, or even a little colder if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But right off from digging, it's good to keep them maybe a little bit warmer so that the roots will grow out, and the plant will actually continue to grow.
Yeah, you mean right after right at the beginning of their winter
Yeah,
journey in a pot,
yep,
and then
yeah. You want them to grow into the pot a little bit and to stabilize.
once the roots established, then they are a little bit hardier.
They're hardier, and you could chill them down to. You could even freeze them sometimes.
Like if the nighttime temperatures dip below freezing, that's fine.
Yeah. Yep.
How cold do you think they can get?
I've had them below freezing, like a couple degrees. We put thermometers in them because they felt hard, and you know they didn't go in, so they were frozen.
And is it very variety dependent how well they do?
Yes, definitely. And it could, variety or strain dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking for something cold hardy, freeze them and pick the winners.
Yeah. Induce a little selection process.
Yeah, it'll help you clean out your greenhouse too.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I've been thinking about, in our seed warehouse, we have a seed cleaning area, and I've been thinking about overwintering the pots possibly in there. So that's going to be probably above freezing, but beneath 50 Fahrenheit most of the winter. I've just been afraid of putting these pots into the greenhouse where we've had rodents recently. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like doing a year or two where we're not feeding the beasts through the winter.
Yeah.
What do you think about that if it's in a room that's not too hot and
Yeah, I'm in the exact same situation you're in. At home, I have a back room that gets about the same temperatures you said, and I'm trying to make the same decision. Um, we we have kept plants in dark places. If yours is going to be dark, and it's worked.
it'll be there'll be ambient light, like not a lot of light,
And
but there's going to be some light.
yeah, you probably want to keep with the less light, you want to keep it cooler so the plants aren't trying to stretch and grow into the light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even a grown plant will do that.
Yeah.
I think it'll work. I'm trying it this year. I hope it works.
Yeah. And how wet do you want to keep these plants through the winter?
We dry ours out.
Hmm.
Um, we'll water. We don't even set up the drip sometimes until springtime, um, on the pots. So our watering schedule is sometimes based on the aphid pressure,
Hmm.
because you can wash them off after um,
Ha.
suffocating them. So
Yeah.
it's a way to, yeah, get them off the plant and clean them up.
Do you want to tell a little bit more about that? How, like, what that looks like?
Sure. Because we keep our greenhouse at 50, we get aphid blooms here and there, where the heater is blowing down on the plants is where it'll show up first. And then we use a bunch of different techniques, um, and one of them is watering. So we clean up the plants. We prune them all up. Uh, Probably every other week, we trim all the plants.
Okay.
Um, some populations more than other, depending on how fast they're growing, but they all get pruned.
Do you prune them whether there's aphids or not?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. If they're growing, we'll prune them.
Hmm.
Um, and in the fall, after they've been in the house just a week or two, we um, spray like a herb oil on them, which is a combination of thyme, rosemary, and garlic.
Hmm.
And that kind of it draws out the aphids and suffocates them a little bit.
Hmm.
And then you can wash them off. Um, and we also use aphid midge through the growing season in the greenhouse.
Yeah. They might not be as effective in the winter.
Yeah, they're not as effective, but because it's at that 50
Yeah.
and the sun's hitting, like those times,
Hmm.
they'll be effective when the aphids are also effective
Okay.
eating the plants.
Yeah.
And then ladybugs and lace wings, we've got those in there. But the pruning of the plants is both for the watering and just keeping the plants somewhat healthier. Um,
Hmm.
because the outer leaves, some of them will die because they're just trying to do too much and they need to get rid of the excess
Yeah.
old stuff. Yeah, and then the watering is very effective to um, both water the plants and clean them.
So if you didn't have any aphid pressure, how often do you think you'd be watering? Is it weekly,
Oh, once a
monthly?
week. Yeah, once a week maybe. And kind of we lift the pots to
Yeah.
see how heavy they are.
Yeah.
And if they're heavy, we don't water.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's by weight.
Yeah. I like that. Is there anything else you're doing through the winter to get to that next season?
Taking a lot of notes. Um, like some of the leaves, we call it bad brains.
Hmm.
Um, when they get cold damage,
Hmm.
the veins in them will kind of explode a little bit. And the plants that do that are not as cold hardy. So we'll go through and select out after some cold spells
Hmm.
those plants. But yeah, it's not a lot of work until the beginning of March is when they start. The season starts to change, the lighting changes, and the plants just start growing. And we have to build our populations.
What happens at that point?
We bring in about 1,000 plants,
Okay.
and then we whittle it down to a third of that or less in selection. Um, so it's a lot of picking out plants to then create a population to go to seed. And you have 2 to 3 weeks to do that
Hmm.
in the beginning of March. So we move plants around a lot. I would recommend it if you are someone doing this to write on every pot what it is. Um,
You mean like the variety or the strain, or if it has a number or something?
yeah, however you're documenting what you're doing, if you're doing more than one thing. And you can write notes right on the pot as well, like I liked this one in the field, or so you're looking at all those notes.
When you say on the pot, like you mean literally on the pot?
Yeah,
And what are you using to do that?
garden marker and blue tape,
Okay. Okay.
like the blue masking tape. We used to do it on stakes,
Hmm.
like the garden stakes,
Yeah.
but those in the greenhouse for that long start to rot and break off,
Right.
and you start losing your notes all over the floor. Um,
It's very
so,
tragic.
yep. So we move pots around a lot. We make our selections, and then this is a heavy pruning time also. We're probably pruning these plants, selections of them every day. So there's a lot of greens going. We give these to all the employees, all the greens.
That sounds like a delicious treat at that time of year.
Yeah, it is a delicious treat. Sometimes it tastes like thyme from the thyme
I
oil.
love that.
And then we build the populations in the greenhouse and we bring them to seed in the greenhouse,
Still in a pot?
still in a pot. Yep. We do them in 2 rows, side by side, and our populations could be anywhere from 8 plants to 40 plants or 60 plants. And we build a structure over them.
So when you say a population, so you started with 1,000. You say you've whittled
Yep,
down to about a third of that. So let's call it 300 plants or 250.
300 plants. Yeah, it's probably even less.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So we could say 200. Let's say 200, just because that makes for
200
easy
plants. Yep,
math. And then you're breaking those down into smaller populations again.
correct. Yeah, because when we bring the plants in, they're already from different populations
Right.
or strains. And then depending on the project,
Yeah.
you would group them how you want them to mix.
Hmm.
And then the structures we use the Johnny's 4-foot hoop bender with the conduit,
Yeah.
and then I built risers for them
Mhm.
that adds about a meter to the height,
Okay.
3 feet.
Were you doing that conversion for me specifically?
Just for the world listeners.
I love it. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Um, so because those hoops aren't that tall, they go maybe 4 feet high. So I'm just trying to lift them up
Mhm.
because the plants when they grow tall, and then you have to add in the pot.
Of course, yeah. You're not at ground level. You're above.
You're above ground level. So the higher you can get that, the better. And if I would go back and do it again, like I've already built all these hoops, we reuse them every year. I would actually make them more square
Okay.
in structure and not the big hoop because I have 2 plants in a row and they push out, and they're often pushing on the edge.
What are you covering the plants with? Is it like just insect netting, or is it another fabric?
It's a great question. We use a product called bee netting.
I'm not familiar with it, but I can imagine what it looks like.
Yeah, it's so there's ProtectNet, which a lot of people know.
Yeah, I know more ProtectNet.
Yeah, so that's really the holes are really small and that keeps the humidity inside the tent. And bee netting it's used in the tree, like trees or seedless grapes or seedless oranges to keep the bees out
Hmm.
of your trees, the tree canopy. But we
Yeah.
use it to keep the flies in and then the other pollinators out.
Yeah, it's like call them blue nose. Is that what blue nose flies that you're
Oh, blue
no,
bottle. Yeah,
blue
blue
bottle. I
bottle
say blue
flies.
bottle. Blue
Yeah.
nose is okay. So those are blue bottle.
Yeah, blue bottle flies.
Yeah, those blue bottle flies that you're introducing. So if you were making your tents more square, like you could almost do it with lumber. Like it wouldn't have to necessarily be an
Oh yeah,
arch.
you could use whatever you want. Yeah, anything.
Yeah.
We've used stakes,
Hmm.
really tall garden stakes, and put some duct tape on the end so you're not ripping your netting
Yeah.
and cover it. We've used different size conduit like fence rails. We landed on the hoops because we also use them in the field for other applications in the summer. So it's an easy. Um,
Yeah. You knew about them.
I knew about them. We had some. I had to get a lot more, but um, it was a known.
A known quantity.
a known quantity. Yeah.
So at this point, you're irrigating now once the growing season begins.
Yeah, once March hits and they start growing, the pots start drying out much faster as they're using the water to grow.
And you said you mentioned you're using a drip system?
Yeah, we use a drip system. We've tried a few drip systems out, but we have settled on a it's a I don't know the name of the product, but it's a slightly thicker walled tube. It's about an inch. It's the same as a drip tape you'd put in your field, but it's a little bit heavy, more heavy duty. And there's emitters every foot on it.
Okay.
Um,
And then you have a pot every foot?
yeah, yep. Because the 3 gallon pots are about a foot wide, 11
So
inches.
you have them touching each other in row,
Yeah,
essentially, and then you have a space between the two rows.
no.
Or the two rows are really touching each other, like
They're touching each other because that netting and how they grow out,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to keep them in the center as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um,
And then that'll help also make sure the plants cross with each other instead of
Yeah,
like
that's
even
true.
more
They
than
yeah, they intermingle in there. And then I put a stake in every third plant, a garden stake,
okay.
um, for trellising. So
Okay.
we box weave the
Yeah.
first couple and then or yeah, we weave the first couple of heights and then as it gets bigger, we box it in.
So you have stakes in both rows.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
when you say box it in, you're kind of just like at the end, you're just wrapping it around, sort of.
Yeah, just wrapping it around, but each row individually, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
When do you stop pruning?
I stop pruning when the net goes over.
Okay.
So when they start flowering, sometimes we will crawl under in there and prune off some just to try to make them look nicer or make sure disease isn't setting in or aphids,
Hmm.
because you're even more enclosed in there. But
Yeah.
it's much less pruning once they start flowering.
Do you uncover them ever before you're harvesting the seed? Like I know there can be like some lingering flowers that just persist.
Yeah, so there's on a lot of the brassicas, they'll have a first flush, which is the majority of the seed. So that when that all sets but is green,
Hmm.
we will uncover it and prune off all the younger flowers,
Okay.
um, a cage at a time. We'll go around, we'll cut them all off, and then we do a lot of single plant selections. So this is something that may sound like overkill, but I put a bamboo post in every single pot, and then I then try to, without breaking the plants, wrap a string around the plant to contain each plant individually.
For the ones that you can do single plant selections or all of them?
As a habit and as a training, I do it on everything.
Hmm.
Um, I do not do that at home. At home, I box it in and walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, in my case, where I'm growing, like this is a Brussels sprout variety that we've grown more plants that we need. We're just going to bring it in as in pots, and we don't have any other Oleracea going to seed at
Hmm.
that point, so we won't net it, and we'll
Yeah.
just let it go to town. Does that
Yeah.
sound about right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. And ideal. That's a lot easier to manage.
Being in pots, how much does that affect seed yield? Like, is it stunt them a little bit?
I would be the bigger difference, I think, is being in protected culture or outside.
Okay.
When you are in protected culture, like in a greenhouse, you will get more seed because the climate's just nicer for the plants, and they'll just
Yeah.
pump out more healthy seed. Out in the
Hmm.
field, you can get a lot of rain on them, dew, like there's just so much that can go wrong outside as opposed to inside. But the benefit to outside is you have a lot more, in my case, maybe not yours, you have a lot more pollinators um,
Hmm.
visiting those plants. So you'll get possibly more seed that way. So it really depends on your context.
Yeah, and actually, I think if we did get them through the winter in pots and kept them in pots, we might just grow them outside because then we're not taking up space in the greenhouse that could be used
Yeah.
for something else.
Yep. And then I would just put them. I would just dig a hole and pull it out and put it right in the ground.
So plant them down. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. But they may elongate on you or like start going to seed earlier than you can get them outside, which you also have to think about. Um,
Yeah, that's true. And then I'll put them somewhere that I don't mind if I have to keep them there because, like, we can only get into the field like early May, and I know things can really be flourishing by that time.
yeah.
So, yeah, so I'll put them somewhere that I don't mind if they stay there.
Yeah. The first time we did this here, back in 21, it was kind of a mistake. We loved the plants, we brought them in, we thought they would hold, and then we didn't have a place for them. They were flowering too early, they couldn't go outside. So we moved them from greenhouse to greenhouse as we were getting kicked out of all these different greenhouses.
That does not sound like a lot of fun. It sounds like a great learning
It was a
experience.
really good learning experience. We also did what's called biparentals, where we just matched two plants together and just did two plant crosses,
Okay.
which is also a lot more work.
Yeah.
They get stuck together.
Do you think that we've covered the main questions about overwintering crops like this?
The one thing I would say is the when you're growing in an unheated tunnel in the ground, you you cover your plants at 20 degrees, um, -5 Celsius, um, and that's much less work than all the stuff we're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's what I would recommend to
Is
someone.
growing them on the ground if we can.
Yeah, I would grow it in the ground if you can, if you're not trying to, if it's fitting with your workflow and workload.
Yeah.
Um, but you won't be able to expand further than that
Mm-hmm.
space. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, you don't get the pest pressure, you don't get the added work in March. Yeah,
Yeah. And when you say on the ground, you mean in the ground like in a greenhouse?
yeah, in the ground in an unheated greenhouse that you only have to visit once a week or even less.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we're comfortable doing that this year.
Yeah,
but
no. Well, yeah, you have the rodent pressure. I did do this with Swiss chard. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to get away from doing Swiss chard in pots, and I had rodent issues as well. They came and ate a whole bed.
yeah, I mean those are even tastier than brassicas, I think, to the rodents.
Oh yeah, and the older they are, the tastier they are. They just eat that whole root.
I'd like to go to a non-brassica crop, but can we talk about what this might be like for chicories? Because that's a crop that I've struggled to overwinter in different kind of capacities. I've tried outdoors with some success, but I've been thinking about pots.
Hmm.
How would this change if I was dealing with chicories versus brassicas?
With chicories, it's better if they haven't headed up while digging them to overwinter. Once they're headed, in my experience, if you have the looser leaf, they'll make it through to the other side a little bit nicer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but everything else, like when I do chicories, I do them in a smaller pot because the plants are usually a little smaller. So a 2-gallon pot works fine for those.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Swiss chard. And yet you prune them just as much. They don't get as much disease pressures through the winter. Um,
Which is nice.
in my experience, they're quite pretty to look at through the winter. But the cycle would be exactly the same as a brassica.
So if you're selecting these plants or potting them up before they've headed out, then are you relying on knowing that it's a pretty stable variety, or are
Um,
you watching it head out in the pot?
well, for chicories, a good technique is for your nurseries, you plant like every 10 days or a couple weeks the same germplasm, and then you pick which ones are the good ones. And then going into the winter, you have a nursery just for that where you can select some plants that'll make it through a little better.
Can you repeat that, or can you? So you're planting every 10 days to see
Yeah,
how they're doing because the weather because the season really different seasons really have an impact on
yeah,
them
and
and
chicory is interesting in that they react differently as a plant in general when you plant them. So some need to be planted earlier and some later, and then when you cross a couple chicories together, you don't know what its children where it wants to be. Um,
right.
it might want to be a late planted um, chicory that's a little bit cold hardy, or it might want to be like an early leafy, or
Hmm.
so getting to know the strains is a really good thing to do in general for chicory. Um,
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we've done a lot of trialing, trying to figure out what we like and don't, and some years it acts differently. And
yeah, yeah, and just planting it out, yeah, over and over again. You can see where it's where to slot it, basically, if you were a market gardener.
what kind of things are you working on at home? Like you've told us a little bit. You mentioned greens and stuff, but what is it that? What are your goals at home that you're hoping to achieve and impress yourself in the world with?
Well, I have a bean project that I've been working on for 10 years now, where I've been selecting chance crosses in my bean crops. So I do about 1,700 bed feet of beans um, every year, 17 varieties, and they all cross up. So maybe one day I'll be known for the a special bean. I'm also keeping chicory for seed every year, um, which I'm always excited about. And brassica greens, I like crossing them up. Um, and I should say that I am excited for anything that I can supply my partner with for her cafe, and then people will eat and be excited about. Um, so trying new things, whether I grow the seed or someone else is growing seed of something that nobody's carrying. Um, an example of that is this year I became very excited about cucamelons.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know if I will dive into a project on that, but they're very tasty and um, very different.
Do you have a lot of access to a lot of different germplasm for cucamelons?
Um, I do not, but there's a couple people who are very interested in it
Hmm.
in the United States. So
You got to tap into the right networks.
yeah, I'd say I'm also still interested in Swiss chard as a crop. Because it was my great grandfather's favorite crop. So I
Mm.
have this like nostalgia of him being out in the field, in his field, his garden, in his best clothes. He always wore his suit in his garden, um, picking Swiss chard. And part of me just wants to continue to work on that because I think of him during it.
Hmm. Um, that's a great. I think that's a great image to end kind of like the main interview on, and then us to get into the wrap up questions.
Oh, great.
And so the first one is, what would you tell your younger seed growing self?
I would tell myself,
Lance.
like I alluded to earlier, is I would probably hang out with my elders a little bit more when I was younger. I would tell myself to save a little more seed than I think I want to, both in from variety or from different types of crops. And then I would also say keep a notebook and write things down because just keep writing down on, like I said, on the pots, on it, just keep yourself organized because it's very easy to put something down and forget what it is. Those are what I would tell myself.
And what would you say to market growers to inspire them to start growing some of their own seed?
I would say if you're not growing your own seed now, ask your friends if they're growing it and ask them to try it, their seed. They will be very excited to share it with you. Um, and they will also help you if you decide to grow your own seed. I would set aside more space for your crops in case you feel like saving seed, like just plan ahead, even if you're not going to do it, and then you may do it. That's the recommendation I always give myself when I'm planting. I was like, oh, 20% for maybe I will save seed. Um,
I like that maybe.
yeah, yeah, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Is there something that I should have asked you?
I can't think of anything.
There's something I'm going to ask you now that I just thought about. When you're
Oh, good.
when you're talking about the seed, something that I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting, but I feel like you're really often talking about just this potential of things to change. And like we kind of talked about it a bit at the beginning, but when you're thinking about keeping seed, are you mostly thinking about what we call breeding, I guess, but just like moving the population in different directions? Like, is that a big part of what you think of with seed as opposed to just keeping a variety for next year?
Yeah, for me, I do think of moving the seed, whether it's a variety that I just want to be more adapted to my own location or just seeing something cool and new, which is always exciting to see what would happen if I did this or that. Um, so yeah, I am always, when you're selecting seed, you're always moving it in a direction, whether you think you are or not. You're selecting the seed to move forward. So I'm just trying to be a little bit conscious about it.
Yeah.
Um,
And that brings up back to that opening, one of the opening statements you said about having a goal.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
So how can people find out more about what you're doing?
they could check out Johnny's seeds.com for all of what Johnny's is doing. And you could also check out my partner's cafe. They're heavy into Instagram and photograph my work sometimes there. And that is Café Grazie, and they're in Rockland, Maine.
And I will put links in the show notes for that too, so
Great, thank you.
people can click on through. So thank you, Matt, for this great conversation, and I've really enjoyed getting so much deep into digging up.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it was also very helpful to me as I transition from doing this all at work to doing this all on my own at home.
And that's episode 39 of the Seed Farmer Podcast. Thanks, Matt, for being on the podcast. I'm looking forward to going and digging up my Brussels sprouts plants and then potting them up. I'll make sure to tell you about them next year. Thank you to Safiya Sedelton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at safiyasedelton.com. Thank you to Molly Breesborough for editing this episode and all her support. And thank you so much for joining me in these conversations with seed farmers. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at seedgrowers.farm. You can also find out where to order a copy of my book, The Seed Farmer, A Complete Guide to Growing, Using, and Selling Your Own Seed. And of course, you can sign up for the Seed Farmer Mentorship. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time. You wouldn't want to miss the next episode. Until then, happy farming.